This is very strange. I've got a different Skype, different kind of messages and whatnot. All right, so it's Saturday morning Thai time. Looks like that we've got 8 people on the group, which is kind of typical. And today I would like to talk about life scripts. First question is did anybody read the or see the video that was just published not long ago on George Garland? It was just published this morning. All right. So since nobody's seen it, never mind. We'll continue on without that. So what we're going to talk about today is scripts, life scripts. Now, Eric Berne was the one, he was a student of Freud, who came up with the concept of life scripts. One of the ways that we can easily think about a life script would be one's life story. Not about the end of the book and how you die, but basically how you live your life. Now, Eric Berne talked about life scripts, and he did mention about death in the sense that many people somehow have part of their life script or their story is that you're not supposed to outperform your parents, which means then that you don't outlive them. And Eric Berne actually figured out that that was what his life script was, and he was not able to fix it. Basically, I remember that he said that his dad died at the age of 57, and voila, Eric Berne also, even after he published the book talking about life scripts, which is, by the way, is in a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay, guess what age he was when he died?
56.
57, yes, exactly. All right. Well, my dad died at the age of 65, and I've outdone him more than 20 years now. Not quite 20, but anyway, certainly about 15. So another way of talking about life script or a life story is your destiny. Now, destiny really does have the kind of the value of the outcome rather than the process. But basically, we need to talk about the life script or a script as a process. Now, you've heard me say, and in fact, it's quite famous from Shakespeare. He says, all the world's a stage, and each one of us is a player. Hello, Vinny.
Hey, Dhammarato, how are you?
All right, we're going to be talking about scripts today.
Awesome, I'm in.
Good enough. Now, Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage, and each one of us is a player on that stage. How many of you have heard that before? That's very common. Okay. Now, I'm going to add a line to that. And that is that everyone is on stage, like a real stage with play stages or movies, television programs. They have things called rehearsals and whatnot, and that's where the actors are reading a script. Right? Okay. What script now then is being read on the Shakespearean stage, where all the world's a stage and each one is an actor? If they're reading a script, what script are they reading? I've already given you the answer to that. Anybody? Mikey.
Woe is me.
No, the life script. We are reading a script, and it is our life story. And if we continue to read that script all throughout our life, it becomes our destiny. Now, the question would be, who wrote the script? Who wrote your script? Anna, who wrote your script? You did, exactly. We write our own script, except that we write that script when we're too young to know that we have basic choices. And so what we do is we gather up a pile of dust, a pile of lies, a pile of whatever the young child sees, and he writes his life story with that. And then the life story is what we read throughout our whole life. Now, one of the prominent issues about the life script or the life story is, what are we afraid of? Now, one thing about fear is that fear itself comes out of our instincts. In fact, the primary instinct is the self-preservation instinct, and we're actually trying to preserve the self or the idea of a self. It's funny that the scientists, when they came up with that concept of self-preservation instinct, if they had been wise, they would have used the word organism preservation instinct, the instinct to preserve the organism, but he actually used the word self-preservation instinct, and that's really important because when fear comes up, we automatically say, it's my fear, I'm afraid. Now, the fear that comes up, let us say the concept of fear is based upon, am I still here? Camera went off. There, now it's back on. Okay, so the fear that we have, but what we're afraid of, is normal. Normally, let us say, when we'll have to do with this beautiful camera. Way back when, hundreds of thousands of centuries ago, place, and we could get eaten by dinosaurs, a pound or a wolf or whatever like that, and so humans operate through fear. There's a lot. The point is, though, that the world now is not dangerous as it was 100,000 years ago. Like he's fixing the camera. Oh, that didn't do it. There it goes. Now it's on. Okay, so even though the world is not nearly as dangerous as it was way back when, that in fact it was because of fear that humans started to carry weapons with them for protection. That bears and wolves have teeth, bears have teeth and claws. Humans We don't have many teeth. We don't have many claws. And so we've used weapons throughout history for protection, which means then that humans have become afraid of each other because that guy's got weapons. Maybe I should have weapons too. Now, there was a song that was done, the name of a television series. I don't remember the name of the series, but the main actor, his name was Monk. And basically, he had a lot of phobias. Phobias about dirt, phobias about cleanliness and that kind of stuff. But what that did was, because he spent his whole life script looking for dirt, he actually became quite observant, and he became a police detective that could solve all kinds of crimes. But he got fired from the police force because he was nuts with his phobias. But then they would rehire him on a case-by-case basis where they couldn't figure it out, and they'd let him come in and figure it out. Now, the reason I'm telling you about this television series is because it has a theme song, and the theme song was, "It's a jungle out there." And what I would like to point out to you is that that's not the case so much that we believe that it's a jungle out there, but really the song should be, because of his phobias, "It's a jungle in here." That's really what's going on, is that it's a jungle in here. And all of the fears that come up are basically fears that we invent that are not actually on the outside. It's not really a jungle out there anymore. Well, somewhat. I mean, we were born in the jungle, we were raised in the jungle, we become humans as a jungle, and we started building villages, putting big fences and forts around it, walls, etc., like that, and now we have cities. And what do they call the cities now? A concrete jungle. So that still idea is that things are dangerous everywhere we go. You have been trained that way, that in fact, instead of having normal fears that are coming out of the instinct about real dangers, we've written into our life script various things to be afraid of, just like Monk was afraid of dirt. I hear other politicians are afraid of dirt, afraid of germs. They call it germophobia. In fact, I would like to introduce that word phobia to you. The word phobia actually comes out of the Greek, and the word actually phobia gives us our word fear. You have to twist it around a bit, but that's where the word comes from. And so the psychiatrists have listed a whole long list of phobias. There's claustrophobia and agoraphobia, and there's phobia of spiders, phobia of snakes, phobias of all kinds of descriptions. And the people who have these kind of phobias, they're nuts. One of my stories is that I had a fourth grade teacher. I moved into the class because my family moved in late, and the class was already underway. I think it was like November, December something. And one of the kids in the class gave me a book, opened the book to a page that had a photo or a picture of all kinds of snakes. And he says, "Here, show this to the teacher." And I did. And she really did freak out. She hated me for the rest of the semester. Every kid in class knew that this woman had a phobia of snakes, but I didn't. They put me up to it. All right, and that was my first introduction to weird belief systems. She was afraid of snakes so much so that it wasn't the snake that she was afraid of, it was the image of a snake. I didn't show her a snake. I didn't have one coiled around my neck and brought it into class and kissed it on his head and shoved it in her face. Oh no, it was merely a photo. How many of you have a reaction to photos of snakes? Well, that means you don't have a phobia of that. But we do have all kinds of phobias. And that we write these phobias about what you're supposed to be afraid of, we write that into our life script. And we go around being afraid of certain things. In fact, one of the things that get written into life scripts nowadays is fear of police. How many of you have that phobia? I know Vinny doesn't because he's here in Phuket. I know that Michael doesn't because he's here on the island. But I was trained as a young kid to be afraid of police. My dad did that to me. Now, the funny thing of it is that my mom, her father, my grandfather, who lived, by the way, in those days, he lived in North Carolina and we were living in Oklahoma, but he was a constable. He was the only policeman in town. Waxhaw had a population of about 600, and he was the only one in town, and basically his only real job was to make sure that the gold shipment got out of the gold mine and onto the train, which happened on a very regular basis. I'm not sure how much, because there was a gold mine close to Waxhaw, but it played out. No more gold. So the point is then that my mother did not have any phobia of police. She liked the police. She loved the police. Now that same little town has grown. It's grown to maybe 2,000 to 3,000, but in the process, they have 25 police. They have dozens of squad cars. They've got a great big fancy building. They don't even have a jail in that town. They have to use the county jail, which is 12 miles away. But the point is that there's no reason to have all of those police, except that look at the fear. So we have police, we have a lot of people who are afraid of police, but the police themselves are afraid. That's why they were hired, is they were hired by people who were afraid. In fact, what I've heard is that the origin of police was racial. The whites were afraid of blacks. Let's have a police force who's going around and busting black people and locking them up so that we can feel safe. And now, with all the police that they have in the United States, nobody feels safe. So the police did not solve the original problem. Rich whites are still afraid of blacks breaking into their homes. But the ones who seem to be the most afraid are the cops. I mean, normal, ordinary people do not go around pulling their gun out and pointing it at people, but police do. Why? Because they're afraid. They're trained to be afraid. That's part of their script. So, we have all of these various fears. One of the things then that I would like to have as an exercise today is to ask you to reflect upon what kind of fears that you have, knowing that it becomes part of your life script. Now, in the Wiccan religion, the religion of, you can call it pagan if you're a Christian, they have a saying, actually it's kind of a wisdom, that whatever you're afraid of, you draw that to you. In other words, you're afraid of snakes, you're going to go find snakes. If people don't have snakes on their mind, if they're not thinking about snakes, if they got no fear of snakes, they're not bothered by the snakes, and the snakes you know, they don't bother the snakes and the snakes don't bother them and off they go. But if people are afraid of snakes, snakes are going to show up, even if it's in a book. For instance, if you had no fear of snakes and you were reading a book and flipping pages and you saw a picture in the book of a whole bunch of snakes, you didn't think nothing about it. But if you have a phobia of snakes, then your eye is going to get caught by that photo of the snakes, and then you're going to flip out. So let's go around and talk about it. Vinny, I'm going to ask you first. What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of everything. No, I guess for me, I've got a fear of fears.
Agoraphobia, I think, is what they call that. Fear of everything.
No, you know what? Actually, no, that's not the truth. I'm not scared of everything because I definitely ain't scared of spiders and snakes, being an Aussie. But I mean, I think Dhammarato, I've spoke to you before about some anxiety issues I have. So I'm an expert. With what you're saying, I create such a ridiculous story in my head, and I draw it to me. It's 100% the truth. Whatever you think about, you create. So definitely, yeah, it's what you say is spot on.
All right. So, how about you, Santiago? What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of prison. That's my I think about prison all the time. I ain't looking for trouble or nothing, but it makes me, it really puts me very unwholesome.
All right. You think about going to prison. And while you're thinking about going to prison, you think of all kinds of things there. They take your food away. They molest you in the bathroom. That you're locked up in a seclusion, etc., like that. And so here you go spinning around in that fear system that you're labeling as prison. Right? Okay. What else, Santiago, are you afraid of?
Afraid of things in my past that I don't want to bring up, and maybe showing.
You're afraid to be known, then, is
yeah,
that it?
Being found out.
Isn't that related to going to prison?
No, I don't think it's related to going to prison.
Well, why would you go to prison other than they find out?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. All right. There's always connections within all of this stuff. So, Ben, what are you afraid of?
There's nothing really. I'm not. There's sometimes a negative reaction to medical things or to blood.
Okay. That's quite common. In fact, it's quite possible for people to pass out with fear. They shut down completely because of blood. How many have ever passed out because they were taking blood out of your arm? I have. So, medical procedures, yeah, that's a normal fear. Guess what? In that regard, 100,000 years ago, when humans were quite primitive and lived in a jungle, we could get injured. And so we could say I would be afraid of getting harmed or hurt or injured, but none of them would say that they were afraid of medical procedures. Perhaps, in fact, the right way to think of it is to be afraid that you're not going to get medical procedures, and that's a common fear. That's why there's insurance companies. That's why there's doctors, etc., is because people are afraid they're not going to get medical care, and here you are afraid of getting medical care. Interesting. So, Ivan, how about you? What are you afraid of?
It's very irrational, just being abandoned by people.
Okay. Being abandoned, actually, they say, is a very early issue.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Freud did a whole lot of research into developmental psychology, and after that, some of his students really was into developmental psychology. Um, Reich was one of them. And he came up with a system that one of his students, Alexander Lowen, called bioenergetics. And they actually talked about that body types have to do with what your phobias were when you were really young. And so a big barrel-chested guy, that's a 2-year-old issue. And that the little tyrant. And people become bullies to protect themselves because they had stuff happening from the age of 2. Now, an abandonment is referred to as an oral, and we think of oral as the first year of life. But in fact, it's even actually after the child is a year old when he begins to understand that he is not his mom. That very young babies, during that bonding period, the first year of life, an infant cannot tell the difference between his own scent and the scent of his mom, breastfeeding and all of that kind of stuff. But once the child gets about a year old, that's when we begin to realize that we're separated. We are not our mom. I'm a different human being. That's when the abandonment issue comes in. You see, an infant does not feel abandoned because he doesn't have a me and you or a me and a mom. But at the age of 1 to about the age of 2 is when kids are afraid. Now that they see that they're not their mom, that's when they become afraid. Where's my mommy? Is she going to be there to take care of me? Okay, that brings up a lot of fear. That in fact, I have been around people who had anxiety disorders associated with abandonment. They call them abandonment issues. One example of that is the girl who has an abandonment issue. She's moved in with her boyfriend, or they've gotten married, and now every time the husband leaves the house, she gets really afraid. And one of the things that she'll do is she'll start an argument, she'll start a fight, she'll get him involved to do something to make him stay, because she would rather feel worried and in a fight with him than feel abandoned by him when he goes to work. People like that generally wind up getting locked up. They lose their freedom because they're afraid to have freedom.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I relate to that, afraid of freedom. Like, it's the other side of it is also there's some fear involved. It's very subtle.
it is subtle. And it's subtle basically because when we're reading our life script, when we're out on stage reading our book, we don't know that we're reading this out of the past. We think it's
Yes.
the present moment, where in fact it's not. This stuff is coming out of the past. So, Michael Swift, what are you afraid of?
I would say probably also a little bit of the abandonment. I think a prior fear I used to have, I feel like I used to be afraid of success, but I feel like since I've got into the Dhamma this past year, I've been working on that fear. So,
All right. Yes, and the way that we work on it, by the way, is by being able to see it.
yep.
And that's the reason that I'm bringing this topic up, is to see that our life story has already been written for us. We wrote it, and we wrote into it all the things to be afraid of. And those things generally then manage our life for us, creating a destiny. So, Edward, what are you afraid of? Edward. He's a no-show. He's afraid of turning his microphone on. Samantha, what are you afraid of?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thanks. I've had headphones. I wasn't sure. I'm gonna go with, let's start with heights. Or like steep slopes. Well, hold on, steep slopes. I'm like overly cautious going down hills.
I'm not sure I follow you. Mikey, can you hear what she's saying?
Yeah, it's not coming through for me either very clearly.
Okay,
All right. Go ahead, Samantha.
is this better?
I can hear you a bit better now, yes. Go ahead.
I said heights. Or like steep slopes.
Heights.
Steep slopes.
Heights and steep slopes, she says she's afraid of.
All right. There is, in fact, steep slopes and precipice, the fear of falling. One example of that is that when people look out over a ledge, let us say they're on a balcony on a high-rise building, or maybe they're close to an edge of a cliff, that when they look down, their feet will start to tingle. How many people have ever had that? That your feet will tingle, even sometimes when you think about, no one here, huh? All right. I've had some strange phobias. I have feet tingle when I get close to a precipice. One of the things that I have noticed before I do that, how about you, Anne-Marie? What are you afraid of?
I have a fear of confrontation, conflict with people near me. I tend to freeze up when something, some argument, some conflict happens. But I've been working on it since I started listening to Dhamma calls.
Mm-hmm. I can appreciate that. That in fact, fear of verbal confrontation is basically the same thing as fear of physical confrontation. Because we actually, almost in all cases, if we have a physical confrontation, it's going to be preceded by a verbal confrontation. So, what I would like to do is to give each person an assignment to write down various fears. Each one of you come up with only one or so, but if you sit down and consider it and think about it, you could probably come up with a whole page of stuff. Examples of things that no one has mentioned is, how about fear of loss of money? Does anybody have that one? I don't have enough money. Okay. How about the opposite fear, the fear of loss in the sense of, I'm going to lose my money, I'm going to get ripped off? Now, these two phobias that I'm talking about, on the stock market, they have it as a bull and a bear. The bear is afraid he's going to lose money, that the stock market's going to go down, and so he's likely to sell. And then the bull is afraid of missing out on an opportunity. But both of them have to do with the fear of money. And Look at the stock exchange all over the world. I mean, the stock exchanges and buying and selling stuff like that is a major human trait. And yet no one here mentioned fear of money. How about fear of the loss of housing? How about the fear of the loss of or not having enough to eat? You see, these things are not part of the, let's say, the group dynamics here on this list, but there's an awful lot of people throughout the world that are afraid they're not going to get enough to eat. How about the Russian soldiers and the rag pickers on the dung heap of Calcutta? So there are a lot of different phobias that if you start thinking about them, you can write those things down. And then the next one that I would like to do is to reclassify those things as to short-term versus long-term. Long-term possibly means that it's a delusion, it's not going to happen. So an example of that would be fear of visa. Mikey just went to get his visa, and there was a bit of panic in there. But if the visa is good for 3 months, why should we have panic the week after we get this visa? And now it's going to be 2.5 months before I have to get another visa, but the panic returns every time we think about I got to go get a visa. Jenny, do you know what I'm talking about? You said you were afraid of everything.
I got no dramas with visa. I get one every year, mate. It's all good, all easy. No fear there.
But it takes, because you've been doing it for years, you
I've
got
been doing
over it.
16 years. I'm not afraid of it. But one fear I have, I'm afraid of my wife. So that's a big fear. I didn't say that earlier. If I'm home 5 minutes late, there's a big anxiety.
All right. So you can put that down on your list.
I can indeed, with maybe another 100 more below it. But yeah, indeed.
Yeah, if you really work at it or really start thinking about it, you'll have a long list. Everybody's got a long list of things they're afraid of. And by putting it down on the list and identifying what it is, that will then help you to see when you read your life script that there it is, it comes up. Now, normally, because we're not thinking about the fear, we will become afraid of something innocuous, have a passing fear, and not even think about it. Ivan, go ahead.
Dhammarato, to me, when you mention like fear of loss of money, fear of not enough to eat, I do have that fear too. But I personally
you
see
said you had an abandonment issue. Those two things go very closely with an abandonment issue.
100%. That was what I was. I guess what I was trying to say out loud is it just all ties back to the self-preservation instinct. It's the same thing, but well, I guess that's interesting because personally I see them all come from the same thing, but for some reason, some particular fear is stronger than the other. Because if I were to say, well, maybe it all ties back to the self-preservation instinct, which is fear of death, then it doesn't explain why I don't really feel afraid when I'm standing on a tall building. Like I could, I could fall down, I could die, but that's not a fear that really pervades my existence. But some fear, for some reason, it really have a strong hold over me, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's in fact the point that I made before. Let me reiterate it. I'll say it this way: different folks, different strokes for different folks. Or Everybody writes their own script. And so you probably didn't fall when you were very young. But people who have fallen will wind up having a fear of heights. And it depends upon the people around you. If your mommy is afraid of heights, she'll teach you that, and you'll become afraid of heights. If your mom is afraid of her husband, then she'll instill that fear in you. And if you're a male, you'll be afraid of your wife. Fear of the opposite sex, in fact, is quite common. We have that desire, oh, I've got to go get a mate. And then when we get close to it, whoa, wait a minute. Because that fear will come up. All right, so here's another fear that nobody mentioned. How about the fear of pain? And when you have pain, what about the fear of loss? Like, I'll have to put up with this pain forever. Oh, it hurts now. I bet it's going to hurt forever. Chest pain. Oh, I'm having a heart attack. Leg pain. Oh, I'll never walk again. These are the kind of thoughts that we begin to have instead of recognizing that there is nothing to be afraid of. And so writing down our list of fears is a good introduction, especially in the sense of some of the fears are real. I would put the dividing line right now for you. You might want to change that dividing line later, about a week. So what is it that you're afraid of that's happening or might happen this week versus the fear of things that are not going to happen this week? They're off into the future someplace. Because those fears are the ones that are the most irrational. And we all have irrational fears. Why? Because being rational means that it's imminent danger. Now, the point is that we were given through our DNA this self-preservation instinct that operates through fear for immediate, like there is a real snake there. If you see a snake, it's correct to have the feeling of wanting to avoid it, having that feeling of fear. But the picture of a snake, a photo of a snake, should not bring up that kind of fear because you know rationally that snake is not here. And so this is the way that we can begin to understand our own mindset rather than operating ignorantly, that we built up all of these phobias, we built up all of these fears in the Buddhist Pali language. They call this sankhara. And we built up these sankharas ignorantly. Now let's investigate them. And so that's the first thing that I would do, is to ask you to write down all the fears. Don't do it in one session. Take a week to do this. Every day you sit down with that list of things and says, what am I afraid of? When was I last afraid of this? Etc. like that, so that you can really get in touch with this set of fears that you have. In other words, I'm asking you to start investigating this life script that you've written. Start looking at what you've been doing your whole life based upon the fact that almost everything that you've ever done in your life has been motivated by fear. Fear of getting punished. Why do kids go to school? I mean, any logical, rational 6-year-old would say, screw first grade, I'm not going to go. But no first grader can do that because they're not rational. They're afraid, and so they go, and they learn their ABCs. They don't like reading. Some people enjoy reading because it's fun, but most kids don't like reading because they were told they've got to do it. And so we do it, but we don't like it. And so this is what I'm inviting you to do this week, is to start really looking at all the various things that you're afraid of and putting that timeline on it. Now, the next thing to do is then become aware when these things really do come up in the mind. You've got a pain. Does fear come up? Almost always fear will come up when you have real pain. How about when you're hungry? Does fear come up then? When you have to go someplace? How about getting on an elevator? There's actually a special one for that one. It's actually a subclassification of claustrophobia, the fear of being closed in. Who was it that says he was afraid of prison? Santiago? Yeah, okay. That's a kind of claustrophobia. The fear of being closed in, to not have any freedom. So let me ask you this question. Were you ever told by a parent or a guardian or an older sibling or whatever, go to your room?
No, I wasn't.
Because that is people who are told to go to their room, they'll be afraid of. In fact, go to your room is kind of related to abandonment. But it's also related to this issue of claustrophobia, of being confined. So that's the next point is this one is not nearly so important. And what I'm calling this is psychological archaeology. Trying to figure out where the fear came from is irrelevant. And yet that's a major aspect of psychology, is trying to find out where things came from. Is not the cure. That's part of the diagnosis, but the diagnosis is not the cure. You don't have to figure out where the fears come from. What we need to do is to figure out when those fears come up. Can I see it right here, right now? And that leads into the cure. What is the cure? Mikey, what's the cure?
To remember that we're safe.
Yes, exactly so. That there's almost always these fears are going to be irrational. For instance, you get stopped by the cop. Almost all occasions during traffic stops, etc., like that, it goes badly because the people are afraid of cops. But if you're like my mom, oh, hi, I haven't seen you for a while. How's the wife and kids? Become very friendly with the police or whatever or whoever that you're afraid of. So when you're sitting alone and these various fears come up, and guess what? Almost all unwholesome thoughts have fear in them. So we're talking about something that's very frequent. Very frequent. We're talking about 100 times a day. We're not talking about once a week or once every 2 months these fears come up. Oh no, this stuff comes up on a very regular basis. And what is the cure? The cure is to see clearly, right now, there is nothing to be afraid of. Vinny, you're sitting in your car. Yeah. Is that a safe place?
Indeed it is. I feel great.
Yeah. So you can say, here I am sitting in my car. I'm actually safe.
Yes.
Anna,
indeed.
you're in your room. Is your room a safe place?
Yes.
All right. So that's what we have to remind ourselves of. We have to remember that this is a safe place. There is no reason for fear. Santiago, if you were in prison, if you were locked up in a small cell, could you not actually have the thought, well, at least I'm safe?
Yeah, maybe I can go to Seg, and just read books and then
Yeah, right.
meditate
Wherever I
and
am,
drink
I can
tea and
feel
shit.
safe, or I can follow my life script and remain afraid of things. That almost every thought we have is, well, what about this and what about that? What if this? What if that? Start looking at all of these thoughts and recognizing that basically those are all invitations to start being afraid. That fear is our primary emotion. It's the number one on the list.
Something else is that once you meet your fear, once you meet it, it's not scary at all. It's the
It's not right.
anticipation.
It's not real. So we need to then see these fears. That's why I'm asking you to write a to-do list. Well, this is part of our don't do it list. And this is the chapter called What Am I Afraid Of? And start looking at all of the things that you could be afraid of, all the things that you have been afraid of in your life. Look at those things. Ben, you popped in and out. Never mind. So, if you have this list, then you can actually, as part of what you would call a meditation session, you can go down through that list. And on each item, you can say, not now. Everything is fine right now. I'm not afraid of this right now. Then you go to the second item on the list. I'm not afraid of that either. Everything right now is safe and secure. Literally talk yourself out of the fear and talk yourself into feeling safe and secure. That's what Anapanasati really is all about, is start having wholesome, real thoughts about what really is right now, rather than standing on our stage, reading our script, which what defines us. In other words, this is a healthy, wholesome way to change your destiny. That you're not going to draw to yourself the things that you're afraid of. You're going to be able to push them away in the sense of, I'm not afraid of that. So Santiago, in that regard, start thinking about how much fun you could have in prison. Oh, I can read books. I can write a novel. I can teach Dhamma to the guards. All right, so this is the way that we can handle that, is by recognizing that really all of our fears, almost all of them, are irrational. We have a new one. Michelle?
Hi.
Hi. We're just about to finish up. You called about an hour late.
Oh, I thought it was at 7. Oh, shoot.
Well, your clock changes, but ours doesn't.
So, okay, I'm on the West Coast. I thought it was at 7 p.m. on the West Coast. No.
Well, it's 9 a.m. in Thailand. So go to a world clock and find out your world clock.
Okay. Shoot.
Okay. But
Okay.
9 o'clock is just now turning to 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, okay.
And what we've been talking about is fear. And I find this really amazing. We have them all. We have Samantha, we have Anna, we have Michelle. Wow, the women are beginning to outnumber the men on this call. I'm impressed. So, what we've been talking about, Michelle, is to get a list of all the stuff that you have been afraid of and start then going through that list as a meditation, saying, that's not happening. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of this. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of losing money. I'm not afraid of not getting money. I'm not afraid of pain. I'm not afraid of bullies. I'm not afraid of cops. I'm not afraid of wives or husbands. I'm not afraid of going to prison, because none of those things are real. And start to talk ourselves into feeling safe and secure. Safe and secure is the very, very foundation of the practice of Anapanasati. If you don't feel safe and secure, how can you possibly feel comfortable? If you don't feel safe and secure, how can you possibly then feel satisfied? But if you can feel safe and secure and everything is all right, everything is fine, another way of talking about, I don't have to think about that right now. I can think about being happy right now. In other words, don't worry, be happy. Don't worry about all the stuff that could happen. Start worrying about nothing at all. Just be happy. That's really the practice, to feel safe and secure, comfortable, and satisfied. And over, I want to mention that the Buddha, he said he taught only one thing. What he said he taught, both formerly and now, I teach only one thing. Now, Buddhism is full of all kinds of stuff. In fact, there's a whole lot of stuff to be afraid of in Buddhism, but the Buddha himself says, I teach only one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Now, the word dukkha we're going to translate as being dissatisfied. When you're afraid, you're dissatisfied. You don't like being afraid. How many people here like being afraid? Probably nobody. Nobody likes being afraid. So, if we can then get ourselves out of fear, get ourselves into a state of comfort, and then into a state of satisfaction, everything is all right, everything is fine, not a worry in the world, that's actually right then and there, you have fulfilled the entire teachings of the Buddha. Enlightenment is only one thought away. It's not way off in the distance. Oh, I'll never become enlightened. Oh, it's too much work. Oh, I've got so much to do. Oh, I have so many deep problems. No, the only problems you ever have are the ones you think up right here, right now. There's nothing deep in there. It's just habitual. And it keeps coming right up to the surface. You keep reading your story, reading your life script. And when you can stop reading that life script and start seeing that there's really nothing to be afraid of, then you can come into that feeling of safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. And when you're satisfied, that's the end of dukkha right then and there. And so you're fulfilling the entire teachings of the Buddha right then and there. Now, the next point is that if you keep doing this over and over and over again, this is a repetitive thing. It's repetitive in the sense that you've been on stage reading your life script on a regular basis. Like every time you open your mouth, every time you have a thought, you're reading your life script. Now we're going to start changing that life script, but we have to do it one moment at a time. And so this is a practice that needs to be repeated over and over and over again to take the right noble effort to come out of our fear and to feel safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. If we keep doing that over and over again, guess what? We begin to develop skill. We can develop skill. Now, here's something interesting about playing music. Let us say playing the piano, and people say, oh, well, I can't play the piano. If you go up to that piano and strike one key, it's going to make a sound. It's going to play a note. You can walk up to a violin, and whatever how you want to hold the bow or the way that you hold the fiddle, you can draw that bow, and it'll make a sound. That's music. But it takes skill to keep practicing that so that you play more than one note at a time. You begin to follow the score. You begin to see over and over and over again that you can make your life music. You can have a musical life. You can make your life joyful, but you have to practice over and over and over again. So I'm inviting you to look at your script, see what's in there, and then start making changes to that script. Start looking at it and start making some harmonious, happy sounds. So, does anybody have any questions about this? Anna, how about you? Do you have a comment?
When is the fear like it's rational? How can you notice when it's rational and when it's not rational? I think that's the only.
If there is a tiger on the porch growling and coming your way, that's a rational time to be afraid. But if it's what you're afraid of is not here, right now, then that fear is irrational, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's be afraid of things that are real. Let's not be afraid of things that are not real, things that we made up or things that we read out of our own book that we wrote. Easy,
Okay.
huh? Yeah, that's the easy one.
D'Amato, how does this affect like people with cancer, something that's in their body that they can't get rid of and they can ignore, but they are ultimately going to have to face?
Well, why not face it right now? Oh, I've got cancer, but I'm still alive. The cancer might be eating me alive, but maybe I helped it do that. Why can't I be happy with cancer? As opposed to reading the script, oh, you're supposed to be miserable when you have cancer. If you've got cancer, can you be happy having cancer? Guess what? There is in cancer a thing called spontaneous remission. What is that? In almost every case that they've had spontaneous remission, and it's quite common, is that people say, hell no to that cancer, I'm not going to have cancer. And they stop eating themselves alive. That's what cancer is that you're eating yourself alive. In fact, cancer is probably 90% fear and 10% carcinogen.
And how about an organ transplant? If you have somebody else's organ in you, it's going to reject eventually or wear out. I mean, these are things that I'm saying. You can't just put this out of your head. You have to keep yourself well by
what organ?
Keeping up with treatment. It doesn't matter, right?
Huh?
Any organ that you have from another person is not going to be your own.
Name one.
Heart
transplant?
Lungs, kidney.
Okay.
Liver.
How about, do you want to use kidney or heart?
Either one.
Okay.
Oh, I don't really want to use one. I'm just saying as an example.
Well, how many have you had?
Just one.
Which one?
It's you know, for the first 2 years, you're just living on edge, and you know, you can ignore it all you want.
You're thinking
when I was in the
hospital.
When I was in the hospital in horrible pain, I was doing metta, but I was still in horrible pain, and it would never leave your mind because of the horrible pain. So if you can make that okay for me, that'd be nice.
All right. What have you had transplanted? What have you had?
I've said as much as I feel comfortable. If you want to talk in private about it, we can, but I've had an organ transplant, and I have every expectation that it will be the end of me.
All right.
Or I might get a second. You know,
the only thing to be, let us say, embarrassed about, I suppose, would be testicle transplant. I have never heard of anybody having a testicle transplants. But let's use. Pardon?
I would rather not go into that detail of my own life in a public forum. So if you
All
can
right.
respect that.
Well, the advice that I would give you would be specific for that particular organ. So let us use kidney then. All right. So you've had a kidney transplant. Actually, we've had kidney transplants in my family. Let's see, who was it? My grandfather. This was way back in the 1950s because he died in 1956, and he had a kidney transplant. So they've been doing kidney transplants for a long time, to where I think heart transplant started in the 1960s, and they still haven't done very good brain transplants yet. So the kidney transplant is an old procedure. The doctors know how to do it. And so we could say then that, wow, I'm really grateful that somebody gave me a kidney. You might even want to write him a letter and saying, Willie, thank you for giving me one of your kidneys. So what I'm saying is, make friends with that organ. If you've got a heart transplant, then say, oh, I'm really glad I've got this heart transplant.
That's an interesting one because the person would be dead. How do you deal with that? Is there a karmic relationship with the deceased donor?
Be happy that he gave it to you.
That's not what I asked at all. I'm saying, is there a karmic relationship, do you think, with that person?
Right. Okay. Be sure that you understand now that you're bringing up an irrational fear. Right now, you're bringing up an irrational fear, and the way to deal with that would be, now that I have the transplant. See, before you had a transplant, you had a different language that you were speaking. But now that you've had the transplant, make the best of it. In the sense of, well, I'm really glad I had that transplant. Well, I'm really glad that somebody donated that organ to me. And then we can go and make friends with that organ itself. Hey, organ, I'm really glad you're in my body, and I'm not going to be using my white blood cells to attack you. You and I are going to be good buddies. You do your job, and I'll be grateful for that. So this is the way that you would handle a transplant, is to be happy that you've got it. Feel safe and secure that you're still alive because you've got that transplant, whatever it is.
Is that really something that you would want me to dwell on in meditation?
For a while, yeah, especially dwell on it when it comes up, when the fear comes up of, oh, the donor is dead. Maybe he's got bad karma that I'll have to put up with. All right? The bad karma that you happen to put up with right then and there is those thoughts. And so you can say, never mind those thoughts. I'm going to be very grateful that I've got a transplant. Wow, I'm really grateful for it. Thank you to the doctors. Thank you to the donors. Thank you for white blood cells doing their job. Thank you for accepting the thing. Become really grateful that everything is working out just fine. Just like if Santiago was in prison, be grateful that you're in prison. Wow, I'm going to be doing a lot of good stuff here. Whatever situation you find yourself in, you have a choice. You can either be miserable the way that you have taught, or you can be happy that things are the way that they are. This is the correct way of doing anapanasati. You have to make a change. You have to put in the right noble effort, which is part of the Eightfold Noble Path, to see these thoughts. Oh, poor me, I've got a dead man's heart. And say, wow, I'm really grateful that I've got a heart. Somebody died for me. Wow, I'm really glad that everything has worked out so well.
I guess I kind of missed the point then, because dwelling on that itself would make me unhappy. Just even thinking about it all the time would make me unhappy. I think
didn't
about it
say
enough anyway.
Did I ever say all the time?
Well, you're saying during meditation, so
Right. So
I
when
wouldn't want to dwell on it. I wouldn't want to
Don't-
ruminate on it more than I have to.
But if you are dwelling on it and ruminating, that's in fact what you probably are doing, which is not part of anapanasati. What's part of anapanasati is to dwell on the gratitude, dwell upon the joy that the transplant worked. See, you're still coming from a negative position. Instead of coming from a negative position, I don't recommend going to a positive position. What I recommend instead is to go to a reality position, something real. And the reality is that you're okay. Transplant and all, you're okay. Start thinking about it. You're okay. Nothing to worry about. You're all right. Yeah, there's some pain. I can handle the pain. I'm okay. Our society teaches us that we cannot handle pain. But think about it 200 years ago. They still pulled teeth 200 years ago. Think about it. Would you like to have a tooth pulled without any anesthetic at all? Well, that's how people did it way back when. How about if you were a cowboy in the West and you got shot? Don't you want to have that bullet removed? There's no anesthetic. Can you handle that, having the bullet removed? That's the whole point is that we have in our society become addicted to painkillers, which means becoming addicted to, I cannot handle the pain. I'm incapable of managing pain. So we have fentanyl and we have opioids and we have heroin and we have alcohol. We have all kinds of reasons for people to avoid pain. And the way to handle pain is, I can handle this. Yeah, that's a pain. Pain is actually a message. A message is saying, hey, don't mess with that. The example that I often use is the teenage boy broke his arm, his right arm. And he went to the hospital and the doctor put it in a cast and then he put it in a sling. Why did he put it in a cast? Is to immobilize it. Why did he put the arm in a sling? Is to immobilize it. And here that kid is playing with his pen, drinking coffee, doing all kinds of things with that hand. It's not going to heal, and he's going to complain about the pain. So the right thing to teach that kid to do is use that sling as a reminder to hold your hand still. Let the healing happen. Yeah, it's going to itch. Yeah, it's going to itch because it's healing. It's going to have some pain because it's healing. Be happy that it's healing. Wow, I'm really glad that my broken arms are going to be fine, just fine. I can leave my hand alone. I don't have to use my hand. I can use my other hand. I can teach myself to write with my left hand. I'm assuming, by the way, this is a right-hander. Most people are. But back to your issue, Vad, is being able to change our attitude. That normally the way that you're looking at it and the way that most people look at it is with a victim's attitude. You were a victim.
I disagree. I don't look at the way that you're saying. I disagree with you putting that thought in my mind. I don't look at it as if I'm the victim. Something's being our communication is bad right now. I'm not looking at it as I'm a victim. I was bringing up as a.
So you're not willing to change your attitude? You're not willing to say, I'm okay?
I never said I'm not okay. I never said I'm not okay.
Well, say
we're talking about fear. We're talking about fear.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were before the thing started, and
Yes.
we're talking about your death, and you fear it, and you said, no, I don't want to die, though. And I don't want my kidney to go stop working either. That is a fear.
I'm not following you. Mikey, can you help me with what he's saying?
Can you repeat the last sentence or two, Vad? I'm not quite sure what you're getting at either. Like, what's the
We had a
point
brief
that you're-
conversation. We had a brief conversation before we went live, and so I missed an awful lot about your conversation. So maybe I'm out of context. But what I thought we were talking about was fear of things that are going to happen.
Well, actually, we're talking about coming out of fear. We talk about fear in the sense of getting in touch with it so that we can see it, so that we can change it and come out of it. Also, the fear is the fear of being victimized by the fear instead of being the boss of your fear. And pain. I can handle that pain. There's nothing to be afraid of. This is the change that we make. The reality is that you're okay. And this has to be practiced. Over and over and over again, we practice, I'm okay. Over and over and over again, we practice, oh, that organ transplant's a savior for me. I'm really glad that I had it. Oh, I'm going to be just fine. Same thing with cancer. Oh, I can handle this cancer. I'll be okay. So whatever the transplant was, whatever the illness is, we can be happy whether we have it or not. The thing of it is that if we have an illness and then we don't like it, that's like the Buddha talks about it as being shot with two arrows. One is getting shot by the arrow of the pain itself, and then the second arrow is, I don't like the pain. And so we can change our attitude about, I can handle this pain, there's nothing to it. I've had pain before, I'll have pain again, and I can handle pain. As opposed to being, oh no, the pain is there, that means that I'm really sick, oh, poor me. So let's change that attitude from the attitude of, oh, poor me, I've had a transplant, oh, poor me, I've got pain, into, yeah, I can handle this. Everything is going to be good. No problems, no worries. But it has to be practiced over and over again that you're okay. I hope that is helping for you.
Yeah, I think the things that you guys were talking about are things that are going to get better. Like you could be in prison, not being sexually assaulted would be a win every day. I could see that. Maybe you get out someday and they get better. I'm down a path that you don't get out.
You know, there is
like
more
everybody. Like everybody, we're all gonna die. That's
okay. And it's quite possible that you're going to be sexually assaulted in prison. My comment would be from that is that why do you want an old man? I mean, don't you want a young boy? Why would you be?
I don't know how old. I don't know how old. I don't know how old Santiago is.
He's old enough to use that. He's old enough to say, "Hey, man, I can handle whatever you do to me."
You crack me up.
Yeah. You can handle that. Don't take a bath so often.
Yeah, things do get better with correct practice and a bit of laughter as well. I mean, even if someone is terminally ill and they're going to die, that's not a good excuse to not enjoy this breath. That's not a good excuse to not have wholesome, nurturing thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the phrase, laughter is the best medicine?
That's right.
Never in all my years.
Okay, laughter is the best medicine. If you can laugh it, be with it, because you can't change it, but you can laugh. You can enjoy the moment, even if you're dying. There's going to come a time for each and every one of you where your death is imminent and you're going to be dead within 5 minutes. What are you going to do?
I want to be happy at that moment.
All right, this is over. I'm out of here. Goodbye, cruel world. I'm finished with all of this. Okay? Well, if we can have that attitude, then why can't we have it all the time? Every time we remember, not all the time, but any time that you remember, you've got a choice about how you're going to feel. And this is why we have to practice, is because we built up quite a habit of feeling bad. And we could have the habit of feeling good. So we have to remember to look at the thoughts that we've got, to remember to look at how we feel, to remember to look at what attitude that we have. If we can remember to look, then we can have the opportunity to make a change, to change it from, oh, poor me, I've had a brain transplant, into, hey, I've got a brand new skull. I bet I could take an IQ test now. Or whatever it is. Maybe with new kidneys, you can have thoughts of, wow, this is a great kidney I've got. This is a good one. Best kidney in town.
I feel 10 years younger.
Pardon?
I feel 10 years younger. Get
Yeah.
it? I feel 10 years younger.
Yeah, I feel good.
No. The age difference was 10 years. You don't get the joke.
Kinda. But I could change that to 20 years.
I'm 10 years older than what I received. So I feel 10 years younger.
Okay, now I get the joke. Okay, right. All right. Yes. I've got a new stomach. It's a teenager stomach. I've got abs. Okay? So start having happy thoughts. The reality is that you're okay. That in fact, one of the main things that we know about cancer is that cancer is something that people give themselves. You've heard, for instance, that asbestos is carcinogenic. How many ever heard that?
Yes.
Guess what? People can work their whole lives without asbestos, and they never catch cancer from it. So, cancer, asbestos in and of itself is not the cause of cancer. Basically, the cause of cancer is a cancerous attitude. Just like Santiago going to prison and thinking about going to prison, hating going to prison, and then being in prison and you hate it, they've got you. But if you go skipping and jumping and happy into prison, then they're not going to get through to you. Your prison is not a punishment. So in fact, the reason that they send people to punishment or send them to prison is because they're hoping that they can make life miserable for you. But it's your choice. You can make yourself miserable in whatever circumstances that you're in, which is what people do. They make a choice of old scripts. They picked that up when they were children, when they were too ignorant to figure out that they've got a choice. Now that you're an adult, you have a choice. You have a choice. Isn't that marvelous? You've got a choice. You have to keep exercising that choice over and over and over again. Dad, you're 10 years younger than you ought to be. Wow, that's great. But we have to keep remembering that over and over again. You're a whole lot better off now than you were before that operation. You're great. You're fine. Pain? Yeah, we can handle the pain. Pain, there's nothing to it. It's just a sensation. It's the body giving you a message.
It's not pain. It's anti-projection meds and blood draws and all that stuff. The pain is not really the problem now, but the internal pain, the pain that I had in the hospital, I'll never forget that.
All right. Well, some people never get over their pain. In fact, when they don't have any pain, they go looking for it. Where's that pain? Where's that pain? Oh, I found a little bit of pain. Now I can feel miserable again. So we can change all of that. We have a choice. You can feel good, no matter what the circumstances. No money, you can feel good. No food, you can feel good. Organ transplant, you can feel good. Being in prison, being even in the shower, you can feel good. Your choice. So, does anybody else have anything to say? Michael, do you have anything to say?
No, I don't think so.
How about Anna? You have something to say?
Good to see everybody.
No, thank you. This helped me a lot for what I'm going through.
All right. Michelle, how about you?
No, I just wish that I had heard the whole talk. It's definitely something I need to hear, so I'll listen to it later.
All right. Yes, it's going to be on in just a few minutes after we finish the talk. How about you, Samantha? Do you have anything to say?
No, it's really good to see you guys.
Ah. Emily, do you have anything to say?
Dhammarato, thank you. Everything is okay.
Everything? Okay, all right. Well, thank you all for coming. Ivan,
Thank
do
you,
you have
Dhammarato.
something?
I'm definitely gonna investigate the fear more and doubt, and it's gonna be fun.
All right. Well, Mikey, why don't you take this thing home? Why don't you land this bird?
Yeah, do not be afraid. There are friends to be made. Thank you all for being here today. This has been a splendid Sangha call. Go check out opensangafoundation.org. Sign up for a profile, put a profile picture up. We do like for you to use your real name. Makes it easier for people to connect that way. You can play with all sorts of fun tools and links and things like that. We've been getting a lot more transcriptions of these calls done as well that you can find linked on Open Sangha Foundation. And people have also been doing blog posts more, so happy to see that. And you can check out our Sangha group on there as well. So yeah, Open Sangha Foundation. Check it out.
Yes, we have the ability for messages so you can have a private conversation with someone, or you can post it in a group, which is very much like the groups on Skype. Or if you have something long to say, then you can write it as a post. And I invite you to do this, to get involved in the sense of making friends. That's what the Sangha website is all about, is to make some noble friends. All right. Well, thank you all so much. We'll see you soon. It's been a nice group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
Thank you.